He needed a mother for his sons. She needed shelter, the cowboy's proposal to the outcast Apache woman. Daniel tightened the reins of his horse as he rode back toward his ranch, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him like never before. Ever since his wife had passed away, life had been a constant struggle. He was left to care for his two young sons, Jacob and Eli, without the warmth or guidance that only a mother could provide. Every day felt like a test of endurance, and some nights Daniel found himself staring into the darkness of the cabin, wondering if he could truly give his boys everything they needed. The ranch, while sturdy and well-maintained, felt empty. The laughter of the boys was a faint echo in the air, and the meals he prepared were eaten quickly, followed by silence. Daniel was a good man, hardworking and honest, but there was a hollowness in his life that no amount of labor could fill. He loved his sons more than anything, but he knew that love alone could not replace the nurturing presence of a mother. Meanwhile, a few miles away, a woman crouched near the edge of the forest. Her name was Ayana, and she had been running for days. She moved silently, aware of every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of wildlife. She was an Apache woman, proud and strong, but circumstances had forced her into exile. She had been cast out from her tribe for reasons she could not change, leaving her alone in a world that was often cruel to those who did not fit in. Hunger and exhaustion gnawed at her, but even more pressing was the need for safety. She could not return to her people, and the open plains offered little protection from wandering strangers or dangerous men. That evening, fate brought Daniel and Ayana together. As Daniel rode past the forest, he noticed a figure crouched near the trees, her dark hair blending with the shadows. Something about the way she moved, cautious but deliberate, made him slow his horse. He had encountered travelers before, but there was a sense of vulnerability about her. At the same time, Ayana's eyes, sharp and wary, met his. For a moment, they simply watched one another, two souls aware of each other's presence but unsure of what to make of it. Daniel dismounted and approached slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Evening," he called gently, trying not to startle her. "Are you hurt?" Ayana flinched at his voice. Years of being mistrusted and hunted had taught her to be cautious. "I'm fine," she said softly, her voice steady but guarded. "Just passing through." Daniel nodded, respecting her boundaries but sensing the truth in her words. He could see the weariness in her eyes, the way her body carried the weight of recent struggles. "It's a dangerous place out here at night," he said. "You shouldn't be alone." She considered his words carefully. The idea of shelter was tempting, but she had learned to survive on her own. Accepting help had never been safe. Yet there was something about this man, his calm demeanor, the way he didn't demand anything from her, that made her hesitate. She weighed her options: stay hidden in the forest, risking hunger and exposure, or trust this stranger and his offer of safety. Finally, with a quiet nod, she made her decision. "I'll follow," she said, keeping her distance but moving toward him. Daniel gestured for her to stay close as he led his horse and guided her through the open land toward the ranch. The boys, who were playing near the cabin, spotted the unusual visitor and ran to Daniel, their curiosity piqued. "Who is she, Papa?" Jacob asked, tugging at his father's sleeve. Daniel knelt down to their level, his eyes softening. "She's someone who needs a safe place for the night," he said. "We'll see if she wants to stay." Ayana watched the interaction quietly, noting how the boy's eyes lit up with innocence and trust. There was no fear in them, no judgment. It was a rare thing in her life to witness such pure acceptance. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she belonged somewhere, where she was not constantly running or hiding. At the ranch, Daniel led her to a small cabin adjoining the main house. It was simple, with a fireplace, a bed, and a few chairs, but it offered shelter and warmth. He didn't insist she stay, merely left the door open, giving her the choice. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "No one will bother you." Ayana stepped inside cautiously, her eyes scanning every corner. She was used to reading people, sensing danger before it came, and she saw honesty in Daniel. There was no trap, no hidden motives, just a man offering kindness in a harsh world. She nodded slightly, accepting the small act of trust. Dinner that evening was quiet but not uncomfortable. Daniel served simple stew and bread, and the boys eagerly shared their food with Ayanna, laughing at small jokes and stories. She listened more than she spoke, but when she did, her words were thoughtful, revealing a sharp mind and a gentle heart. For the first time in days, she felt a small flicker of hope, a feeling she had thought long dead. As the night wore on, Daniel prepared the boys for bed, tucking them in and reading stories to ease their fears. Yana watched from the doorway, the sight stirring emotions she had long suppressed. She realized how much this family needed her, just as she needed them. The connection was fragile but undeniable, a bond formed not through obligation, but through shared needs and mutual understanding. Later, as she sat by the fireplace, warming her hands, Yana reflected on her journey. She had faced countless dangers, endured loneliness, and felt the sting of rejection, but something about this ranch, this man, and his sons offered a glimpse of something different. Safety, yes, but also a sense of belonging. She did not yet know if she could stay permanently, but she allowed herself to dream of a future where she was not merely surviving, but living with purpose and care. Daniel, sitting across the room, felt a similar shift within himself. He had always been a man of action, solving problems with strength and determination, but matters of the heart had been foreign to him since his wife's passing. Yet here was a woman who brought warmth and calm into his chaotic world, who understood the struggles of raising children alone, and who carried herself with dignity and courage. He knew that allowing her into their lives, even temporarily, was a risk, but one worth taking. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. The night was peaceful, but both Daniel and Ayanna understood that challenges lay ahead. Trust would need to be earned, fears would need to be confronted, and the outside world could be unforgiving. Yet in that moment, within the walls of the small cabin, there was a sense of possibility. Two lives, shaped by loss and hardship, had crossed paths and found a fragile hope in one another. As the fire burned low and the boys slept soundly, Yana allowed herself to rest. She felt the weight of exhaustion and the comfort of shelter for the first time in what felt like forever. Daniel, too, found solace in the quiet, realizing that perhaps, just perhaps, this chance meeting was the beginning of something life-changing, for him, for his sons, and for the woman who had wandered into their lives. And so, under the vast, star-studded sky of the frontier, a story of survival, trust, and unexpected connection quietly began. Neither Daniel nor Ayanna knew where this path would lead, but both understood that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness, offering shelter, sharing a meal, listening without judgment, could open doors to the most profound changes in life. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in the golden light of early dawn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers, and the soft crow of roosters announced the start of a new day. Daniel was already awake, moving quietly around the kitchen, preparing breakfast for his sons and the woman who had stayed in his cabin the night before. He had spent many mornings alone, the silence broken only by the boys' sleepy voices, but today there was a presence that brought a new, delicate rhythm to his life. Yana stirred as the first rays of sunlight crept through the cabin window. She had slept deeply for the first time in many nights, the exhaustion of travel and worry finally giving way to rest. Rising quietly, she stepped outside and inhaled the fresh morning air. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to smile, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin and the simple comfort of shelter. Life on the ranch was orderly and calm in ways she had almost forgotten. It was not freedom in the wild sense, but it was safety, and for someone who had spent too long running, safety was a rare treasure. The boys, Jacob and Eli, burst into the kitchen, their laughter filling the space like music. "Good morning," they shouted in unison, their voices bright and unrestrained. Iana watched them with a soft smile, her heart warming at their innocence. Daniel joined them at the table, serving bread, stew, and fresh milk. The morning meal was simple but nourishing, and Iana noticed the care Daniel put into every detail, making sure the boys had enough, checking that nothing was missing, and quietly observing their mood and health. During breakfast, the conversation flowed naturally. Jacob, with his curiosity bubbling over, asked Iana about her life. She hesitated at first, the question touching on a part of her she rarely shared, but the boy's genuine interest was disarming. "I've traveled a long way," she said cautiously. "Sometimes the journey is not easy, but I've learned to survive." She smiled faintly, realizing that honesty, shared gently, could be safe here. Eli, the younger of the two, leaned forward with wide eyes. "Do you know stories?" he asked eagerly. "Mommy used to tell us stories about brave people and animals." Iana's face brightened at the reminder of her own childhood, when elders of her tribe had shared tales around the fire. She nodded. "I know stories," she said softly. "Some are about people, some are about the land, and some are about the stars above us." Daniel watched the exchange quietly, a thought stirring in his mind. His sons were connecting with Iana effortlessly, something he had longed for in the emptiness since their mother had passed. She was not just a stranger anymore. She was beginning to become part of the small, fragile family they were forming. The realization filled him with a mixture of hope and caution. He wanted to trust her completely, yet he knew the world outside the ranch could be cruel, and protecting his sons remained his highest priority. After breakfast, the day stretched ahead, filled with chores and tasks that needed attention. Daniel asked Iana if she could help with the garden, and she agreed, stepping carefully through the rows of vegetables. The boys ran alongside her, eager to assist and mimic the work, their laughter echoing across the fields. Iana demonstrated patience and skill, showing them how to pull weeds carefully, water the plants evenly, and tend to the young sprouts with gentle hands. She spoke softly, explaining each step, and the boys listened intently, absorbing her guidance like sponges. As the morning passed, Iana began to notice the subtle dynamics of the ranch and its small family. Daniel worked tirelessly, moving from task to task without complaint, his strength and dedication evident in every motion. Yet there was an underlying weariness in him, a quiet sadness that surfaced in moments when his attention drifted. Iana realized that while he was capable and strong, he carried the weight of grief and responsibility alone. She felt a desire to ease that burden, though she knew she needed to tread carefully. By midday, the sun had climbed high in the sky, and the heat made the air shimmer over the fields. Daniel called the boys to rest and have some water, and Iana followed suit. Sitting together under the shade of a large oak tree, the four of them shared a moment of calm. The boys chattered excitedly about their favorite animals, the adventures they imagined in the hills, and the games they played the day before. Iana listened, smiling and occasionally joining in, and Daniel observed the ease with which she fit into their lives. As the afternoon wore on, Daniel found himself asking Iana about her past, gently and carefully. He did not want to pry, only to understand her, to see the world from her perspective. She spoke in measured tones, revealing fragments of her life. Her upbringing among her tribe, the skills she had learned, the hardships she had faced, and the moments of beauty she had cherished. Her stories painted a vivid picture of resilience and courage, and Daniel felt a deep respect for her strength. He also noticed how the boys were drawn to her voice and presence, feeling safe and comforted in ways they had not felt in years. The trust between them began to grow slowly, a fragile bridge formed by shared experiences and quiet understanding. Iana began to relax, realizing that Daniel and his sons were not like the people who had hurt or rejected her before. Here she could be herself, without fear of judgment or harm. She observed the boys' curiosity and innocence, the way Daniel treated them with unwavering patience, and she felt a sense of belonging she had long thought impossible. Later in the day, Daniel decided to take Ayanna on a tour of the surrounding land, showing her the boundaries of the ranch, the locations of the water sources, and the areas where the cattle grazed. He explained his routines, the tasks that needed daily attention, and the challenges of life in this remote place. Ayanna listened attentively, asking questions that revealed both her intelligence and her willingness to learn. She absorbed everything quickly, demonstrating skills that impressed Daniel and reassured him that she could be a reliable presence in their lives. The boys ran ahead, exploring the hills and calling back excitedly about small discoveries, wildflowers, tracks of animals, and the way the sunlight danced on the streams. Daniel and Ayanna walked behind, talking quietly. Their conversation was gentle, cautious, and respectful, as if both were testing the waters of trust and companionship. Daniel admired Ayanna's courage and wisdom, while Ayanna appreciated his kindness and steadiness. Both recognized the value the other brought to their lives. He provided structure and safety, she offered warmth and guidance. As the day turned to evening, they returned to the ranch, tired but content. Daniel lit the fireplace, preparing a simple meal while the boys played nearby. Ayanna helped with the cooking, chopping vegetables and stirring the stew. They worked side by side, their movements coordinated in a natural rhythm that spoke of growing familiarity. There was no rush, no pressure, only a shared sense of purpose and a quiet acknowledgement of each other's presence. After dinner, the family settled around the fire. Daniel read a story to the boys, his voice calm and soothing, while Ayanna listened and occasionally added small details or gestures to enhance the tale. The boys were entranced, their eyes wide with wonder, and Daniel felt a surge of gratitude for this woman who had entered their lives. She was not merely a caretaker, she was becoming a guide, a friend, and perhaps something more. As the night deepened, Ayanna stepped outside to breathe in the cool air. She looked up at the stars, thinking of the long journey that had brought her here. The dangers she had faced, the loneliness she had endured, and the moments of fear and uncertainty now felt distant, softened by the comfort of shelter and the warmth of newfound connection. She realized that life on the ranch offered her more than protection. It offered hope, a chance to rebuild, and a place where she could belong. Daniel joined her quietly, standing a few steps away. He did not speak immediately, allowing the silence to convey a shared understanding. Finally, he said, "I know this is sudden. You don't have to stay longer than you want, but I hope you feel safe here." Ayanna nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I do," she replied softly. "For the first time in a long time, I feel safe." The boys called from the cabin, reminding them that it was time for bed. Ayanna smiled, turning back toward the warmth of the fire and the laughter of children. Daniel followed, carrying the sense of cautious optimism that had begun to grow in his heart. Together, they moved forward, each step building trust, understanding, and the beginnings of something much larger than either had expected. That night, as the wind whispered outside and the stars shone brightly overhead, Daniel and Ayanna slept with the quiet knowledge that their lives were intertwined in ways neither could yet fully comprehend. The bond of trust and respect had been formed, fragile yet promising, and the foundation of a new family was beginning to take shape. In the vast, untamed landscape of the frontier, two lives had collided, bringing hope where there had once been only fear. And as the ranch settled into peaceful slumber, it was clear that the story of survival, trust, and unexpected companionship had only just begun. The days that followed brought a sense of routine to the ranch, yet the tranquility was delicate, like a fragile bloom in a storm. Daniel, Ayanna, and the boys settled into a rhythm, the chores and daily life forming the framework of their small, fragile family. Jacob and Eli thrived in this environment, their laughter echoing across the fields, their curiosity endless, and their trust in Ayanna growing with each passing day. The woman who had once wandered alone, hunted and cast out, was slowly learning what it meant to belong, and in turn, Daniel was discovering how much lighter life could feel with someone to share both the work and the quiet moments of joy. Yet beyond the comforting walls of the ranch, the world remained unpredictable. Rumors began to stir in the small frontier town, whispers carried by neighbors and passers-by. Yana's presence was unusual in a place where conformity and familiarity were the rules, and curiosity quickly shifted into suspicion. Some villagers spoke of her quietly, casting sideways glances as she moved through the town. Others were more direct, questioning Daniel's choices, wondering why a man with 2 young sons would shelter a stranger, an Apache woman no less, in his home. Daniel, aware of the whispers, felt a mixture of irritation and concern. He had expected hard work and long days, but he had not anticipated the social challenges of protecting someone so different in a community that often feared what it did not understand. Despite this, he refused to turn Ayanna away. He had seen her courage, her wisdom, and the gentleness she brought into his sons' lives. To him, these qualities outweighed the judgment of strangers. One afternoon, as Ayanna helped Eli mend a torn shirt and Daniel worked on the fence line, a group of men from the town approached the ranch. Their boots crunched over the dry earth, and their eyes were wary, suspicious, and judgmental. Daniel met them at the gate, standing tall but cautious, aware that the encounter could turn difficult. "We hear you've got yourself a visitor," the tallest man said, his tone edged with disapproval. "An Apache woman here. You know what people might say about that." Daniel straightened his shoulders, his voice calm but firm. "She's staying here because she needed shelter, and I decided to offer it. That's my choice." The man scoffed, shaking his head. "Choices like that bring trouble. You're putting your boys at risk." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I can protect my family. She's not a threat." The men exchanged looks but did not press further, choosing to leave with words of warning instead. Daniel watched them go, his concern lingering. He knew that while this encounter had ended peacefully, judgment and prejudice were only part of the challenge. Danger could come in more direct ways, from people who did not care about laws, fairness, or kindness. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a new threat arrived, one that was more immediate and alarming. Ayanna noticed figures moving through the trees near the edge of the property, shadows creeping closer as the wind whispered through the grass. Her instincts, honed over years of survival, told her that these were not friendly visitors. She drew herself up, heart pounding, and called softly to Daniel. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice tense. "Someone's here, they've been following me." Daniel's expression hardened. He grabbed a lantern and motioned for the boys to go inside. "Stay there," he instructed, his voice low but commanding. "Don't come out until I say it's safe." Ayanna and Daniel moved carefully toward the approaching figures, keeping to the cover of the trees. As they drew closer, it became clear that these men were dangerous, bounty hunters who had been tracking Ayanna, likely for reasons tied to her past in her tribe. Their eyes were cold, their movements deliberate, and they did not hesitate to make their presence known. Daniel stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of warning. "This is private property," he said firmly. "You will leave or I will take action." The men laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "We're here for the woman," one of them said. "She doesn't belong here." Yana's heart raced, but she did not falter. She stood beside Daniel, her posture steady, ready to defend herself and the family that had given her a chance at safety. "I belong where I choose," she said, her voice strong. "You have no claim over me." The confrontation could have escalated into violence, but Daniel's preparation and quick thinking prevented disaster. Using the terrain to their advantage, he positioned himself and Ayanna so that the attackers could not reach the house without risk. He shouted for the boys to stay inside and keep quiet, then grabbed his rifle, a tool of protection rather than aggression. The bounty hunters, realizing that Daniel was serious and that the family was not defenseless, hesitated. Ayanna, seizing the opportunity, called out to them with a firm warning. "Leave now and do not return. You have no power here." After tense moments that felt like hours, the men finally retreated, disappearing into the shadows from which they had emerged. Daniel lowered his rifle, his chest heaving with adrenaline, while Ayanna's hands shook slightly, a mix of relief and lingering fear. They returned to the cabin, where the boys waited, wide-eyed but unharmed. The event left a deep impression on all of them. Daniel realized more than ever the importance of vigilance, while Ayanna understood that while she had found shelter and family, danger would always be close behind. The boys, though too young to grasp the full gravity, sensed the tension and clung to their father and Ayanna, finding comfort in their presence. In the days that followed, life on the ranch took on a new rhythm. The threat had been a reminder of the harshness of the world outside, but it also strengthened the bond between Daniel, Ayanna, and the children. They learned to work together, each playing a role in protecting and sustaining their small family. Ayanna taught the boys ways to stay alert and calm, blending her own knowledge of survival with gentle guidance. Daniel worked tirelessly to fortify the ranch, making sure that the cabin, fences, and surrounding areas were secure. Through it all, the relationship between Daniel and Ayanna deepened. They shared quiet moments, speaking softly about the future, the challenges they faced, and the hopes they carried. Each conversation, each act of cooperation built trust and understanding. Daniel admired her courage and resilience, while Ayanna respected his unwavering dedication to his sons. Together, they were learning how to face the world's challenges without losing sight of the care and affection they had begun to feel for each other. Evenings were spent around the fire, sharing stories, planning the next day's work, and simply enjoying the rare moments of peace. The boys loved these times, feeling safe and loved, and they began to see Ayanna not just as a helper, but as someone who could guide, nurture, and inspire. Laughter returned to the ranch more freely, and though the threat of the outside world lingered, it no longer seemed insurmountable. Ayanna also began to share more of her past in fragments, allowing Daniel and the boys to understand her experiences, her values, and the lessons she had learned. She spoke of her tribe, the customs she had grown up with, and the reasons she had been forced to leave. Her words painted a vivid picture of a life that had been difficult yet rich with wisdom, shaping a woman who was capable, compassionate, and strong. Daniel listened carefully, never interrupting, and the boys asked questions that were met with patient, thoughtful answers. Through these moments, the ranch became more than a place of shelter. It became a home. Each member of this unusual family contributed something vital. Daniel brought strength and protection, Ayanna brought wisdom and care, and the boys brought innocence, laughter, and the reminder of life's simpler joys. Together they were building something resilient, a family formed not by circumstance alone, but by choice, respect, and mutual support. As the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows over the fields, Daniel and Ayanna stood side by side, watching the boys play in the fading light. The world outside the ranch remained unpredictable and at times dangerous, but within this small haven, they had found a sense of unity and purpose. The confrontation with the bounty hunters had shown them that threats would come, but it had also revealed their ability to face challenges together. Ayanna rested her hand lightly on Daniel's arm, a gesture of reassurance and connection. "We can face anything if we do it together," she said softly. Daniel nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate deep within him. "Together," he echoed. And so, under the vast sky of the frontier, their lives continued to intertwine, strengthened by shared experiences, trust, and the quiet courage that comes from knowing you are not alone. Each day brought new lessons, small victories, and moments of connection that made the challenges of the outside world feel less daunting. In the heart of the ranch, a family was growing, bound not just by need, but by respect, affection, and the promise of what they could face together. The story of Daniel, Yana, and the boys was far from over. The world beyond their home would continue to test them, and the whispers of society and dangers of the land would not vanish. Yet they had learned a vital truth. Strength was found not in solitude but in unity. Trust, once established, could weather fear. Love, even in its earliest form, could become a guiding light. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, building a life that was resilient, nurturing, and full of hope. The ranch had settled into a comforting rhythm, the routines of daily life offering stability and a sense of normalcy. Yet beneath the quiet chores and playful laughter of the boys, something deeper was growing between Daniel and Ayana, a bond that was gentle but undeniable, a feeling neither of them could ignore. After weeks of shared work, quiet conversations, and small acts of care, their lives had intertwined in a way that went beyond simple trust or mutual need. Each morning, Daniel woke early to check on the cattle, repair fences, and prepare breakfast for his sons. Yana would join him, often silently at first, helping with tasks while the boys were still asleep. She had learned his routines and understood how to anticipate his needs, whether by fetching water before he asked or arranging tools so that he could work efficiently. These small gestures did not go unnoticed. Daniel appreciated her thoughtfulness and the way she moved with quiet confidence, making the day smoother for everyone. The boys, sensing the growing closeness, began to treat Ayana not as a guest but as a part of the family. Jacob would run to her side first thing in the morning, asking for stories about her childhood, while Eli followed, eager to help with chores or learn her ways of identifying plants and tracking small animals. Yana responded with patience and warmth, her stories filled with lessons about courage, resilience, and the beauty of nature. The boys listened attentively, their eyes wide with wonder, and often repeated her words as if memorizing lessons about life, trust, and respect. Daniel noticed these interactions with a mixture of pride and quiet astonishment. He had been a single father for so long that he had forgotten what it meant to watch his children grow with guidance and affection from another adult. Seeing them laugh and learn with Ayana reminded him of the woman he had lost and of the nurturing presence he had once taken for granted. He began to realize that she was more than a caretaker. She was a teacher, a friend, and slowly, someone who had begun to hold a place in his heart. One afternoon, after a long morning tending the fields and repairing fences, Daniel and Yana sat by the creek that ran along the edge of the property. The boys were playing nearby, their laughter blending with the gentle murmur of flowing water. Yana rested her hands in the cool stream, letting the water flow over her fingers as she spoke quietly about her dreams, fears, and the moments of joy she had once known. Daniel listened, leaning back against a tree, his gaze steady and warm. "You've taught these boys so much in such a short time," he said softly, his voice almost lost in the rustle of the leaves. "I don't know how I could have managed without you." Yana looked up, meeting his eyes. "You've managed because you're strong, Daniel." But they needed more than strength. They needed guidance, patience, and someone who could listen to them. "I just helped in ways you couldn't." She paused, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "And perhaps I needed this too." Daniel felt a gentle ache in his chest at her words. He realized that their connection went both ways. Just as she had found shelter and safety in his home, he had found in her something he had not expected: companionship, understanding, and a sense of completeness. He shifted slightly closer, the warmth of the sun on his face mirrored by the warmth he felt inside. Over the next few days, their bond grew even stronger. They worked together in the fields, repaired fences, fed the animals, and tended to the boys with a seamless teamwork that spoke of mutual respect and growing affection. Each act, no matter how small, strengthened their connection. When Ayanna laughed at the boys' antics, Daniel found himself smiling more easily, the heaviness of loss lifting slightly with each shared moment. And when Daniel guided the boys through difficult tasks or listened patiently to their endless questions, Ayanna admired his unwavering patience and gentle strength. Evenings brought opportunities for quieter reflection. After the boys were tucked into bed, Daniel and Ayanna would sit by the fire, talking softly about their hopes for the future, the world beyond the ranch, and the lessons life had taught them. Sometimes their conversations were playful, filled with teasing and laughter. Other times they were serious, exploring fears, regrets, and dreams. In these moments, their eyes met often, and a gentle tension lingered between them, a mixture of longing, respect, and an unspoken understanding that their lives had changed forever. One evening, Daniel found himself watching Ayanna as she worked by the fireplace, chopping vegetables for dinner. The light from the fire reflected in her eyes, casting a warm glow on her features, and he realized how deeply he cared for her. It was not just her strength or wisdom that had drawn him in, it was her heart, her resilience, and the quiet way she made life brighter for everyone around her. He took a deep breath, feeling a surge of emotion that he had not felt in years. Ayanna, sensing his gaze, looked up and caught his eye. A faint blush colored her cheeks, and she smiled softly, returning to her task with renewed focus. She had begun to recognize her own feelings as well. What started as gratitude and trust had grown into something deeper, something that made her heart flutter even in the simplest moments, like watching the boys play or sharing a quiet conversation by the fire. She was no longer just a guest seeking shelter. She had begun to see herself as part of this small, imperfect, but genuine family. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between them became undeniable. Daniel noticed how much he looked forward to Ayanna's presence, how her laughter lightened his heart, and how her guidance had transformed the boys' lives. Ayanna, too, recognized that her attachment to Daniel and the children had grown beyond necessity. She wanted to be there, to protect them, and to share in their joys and struggles. Their connection was no longer simply about survival. It was about love, respect, and a shared life that they both had begun to imagine. One afternoon, as a storm rolled in over the distant hills, Daniel and Ayanna found themselves huddled under the porch, watching the dark clouds gather. The wind howled, rustling the trees, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The boys were inside, safe and warm, and the ranch was quiet except for the sound of the approaching storm. In that moment, Daniel turned to Ayanna, his voice soft but serious. "You've changed this place," he said, "and you've changed me. I don't know how I managed before you came. I don't want to imagine life without you now." Ayanna's heart skipped a beat. She had been feeling the same way, yet hearing it voiced aloud made it real. "I never expected to find this kind of peace," she replied quietly. "Or to feel like I belong somewhere like this is home." Daniel took a step closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "I've been thinking, perhaps it's time we stop just surviving and start living. Together, all of us." Ayanna looked into his eyes, seeing honesty, vulnerability, and hope reflected there. The storm raged around them, but inside there was a calm certainty. They had faced challenges, danger, and prejudice together, and through it all, they had built something strong and enduring. Over the following days, Daniel began to plan a way to express his feelings fully, not just to Ayanna, but in a way that honored the bond they had built and the family they were forming. He wanted her to understand that his proposal would not be out of necessity alone, but out of choice, respect, and love. Iana, sensing his intention, found herself reflecting on what it would mean to accept such a commitment. She had lived a life of uncertainty, and the idea of stability and family was both comforting and terrifying. Yet her heart told her that this was a chance for a life she had always dreamed of but never dared to hope for. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Daniel and Iana stood together, watching the boys play in the fading light. The air was warm, and the scent of wildflowers mixed with the earthy aroma of the ranch. Daniel took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Iana," he said softly, "I know life has been difficult for both of us. We've faced danger, uncertainty, and loss. But through it all, I've come to realize that you're not just important to me, you're part of this family in every way that matters." Iana's eyes glistened, the words stirring emotions she had tried to contain. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He took her hand gently in his, looking into her eyes with unwavering sincerity. "I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to live with you, with the boys, and with hope in our hearts. Will you stay with us? Will you be part of this family, not out of necessity, but because you choose to be?" Tears welled in Iana's eyes, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. She thought of the long journey that had brought her here, of the dangers she had faced, and of the rare and precious sense of belonging she had discovered on this ranch. Slowly she nodded, a smile breaking through the tears. "Yes, Daniel," she said softly, "I will stay. I choose to be with you, with all of you." The boys ran to them, sensing the importance of the moment even if they did not fully understand it. Laughter, hugs, and joyful cries filled the evening air, blending with the soft sounds of the settling night. Daniel pulled Iana close, feeling the weight of relief, love, and hope settle over him. For the first time in many years, both Daniel and Iana felt truly at peace. They had faced the hardships of life, the judgments of others, and the challenges of the land, and they had come through stronger together. The bond they shared was no longer fragile. It was a foundation upon which they could build a life of love, trust, and shared purpose. As night fell, the stars twinkling overhead, they stood together, knowing that while the future would hold challenges, they would face them united. Their hearts had found one another, and their family, formed not just by circumstance but by choice, was stronger for it. And in that quiet, golden moment, life on the ranch felt full of promise, hope, and the gentle beginnings of a love that would endure. The morning after Iana's decision felt different on the ranch. The sunlight seemed warmer, the breeze softer, and even the birdsong seemed brighter, as if the land itself was celebrating their choice. Daniel woke early, carrying a quiet happiness that he had not felt in years. The boys, sensing the change in the air, were unusually cheerful, running to greet him as he stepped out of the cabin. Their laughter was contagious, filling the ranch with a sense of life and hope that had long been missing. Iana joined them soon after, carrying a basket of freshly baked bread. Her smile was easy and genuine, the kind that could light up a room and melt worry. Daniel watched her, feeling gratitude and affection swell in his chest. She had chosen to stay, not out of fear or necessity, but because she wanted to be part of their lives. That choice, simple as it seemed, held a weight of meaning that neither time nor hardship could diminish. The boys rushed to her side, eager to help with the morning chores. Jacob carried buckets of water to the garden, while Eli assisted Iana in arranging fresh vegetables for breakfast. Daniel observed quietly, admiring the way Iana handled them with patience and care. She had a natural way of guiding the children, teaching them small lessons about responsibility, kindness, and the joy of work done well. It was more than nurturing. It was a gift of wisdom that Daniel knew would shape their sons' lives for years to come. After breakfast, the family worked together on the ranch. Daniel repaired fences with the boys helping where they could, while Iana tended to the garden and checked on the animals. There was a sense of harmony, a rhythm that came from shared purpose and cooperation. Each task was approached with laughter and conversation, the small moments of daily life stitched together to form the fabric of family. As the day passed, Daniel felt compelled to make the moment more official in his mind. He wanted to show Ayanna that her choice to stay was valued, that her place in their family was permanent. He thought carefully about how to express this, wanting it to be meaningful and sincere. He decided to invite her on a walk through the hills at sunset, a place he had shown her before where the view of the valley and the setting sun was breathtaking. It was a place of quiet reflection and peace, a perfect spot to speak from the heart. When the sun began to dip low in the sky, painting the clouds in hues of gold, pink, and violet, Daniel suggested they take the walk together. The boys ran ahead, eager to explore the hills, leaving Daniel and Ayanna a few moments alone. The air was warm, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth, and the quiet sounds of the land created a calm, intimate atmosphere. As they reached the top of the hill, the view stretched endlessly before them. Rolling fields, grazing cattle, and the distant line of the forest met the horizon, bathed in the glow of the sunset. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. He turned to Ayanna, taking her hands gently in his. "Yana," he began, his voice steady but soft, "these past weeks have changed everything for me. For the boys, for this ranch, for all of us. You've brought warmth, guidance, and hope into a life that had grown heavy and lonely. I don't want to imagine my days without you by my side." Yana's eyes shone in the fading light, her heart swelling at his words. She had come to feel the same, yet hearing him voice it so plainly filled her with both joy and a gentle awe. "Daniel," she whispered, "I never thought I'd find a place to belong, but now I feel like I finally have a home." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hands. "You're more than welcome here. You're not just someone who helps with the boys or the chores. You're part of this family, part of our lives in every way that matters. And I want you to stay, not because you need shelter, but because I want you with us always." Tears welled in Ayanna's eyes and she nodded, her lips curving into a soft smile. "I choose to stay," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I choose to be with you and with the boys." The moment felt timeless. The wind whispered through the tall grass, and the colors of the sunset seemed to wrap around them, carrying their joy into the world. Daniel pulled her close, holding her gently as they shared the quiet understanding of their choice. Their lives were no longer separate paths crossing by chance. They had become a shared journey, one that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Returning to the ranch, they found the boys waiting eagerly. Jacob and Eli ran into Ayanna's arms, laughing and hugging her, while Daniel watched, his heart full. The boys' acceptance and joy made the choice feel even more real and significant. Together, they were not just a family, they were a team, a unit bound by love, trust, and shared experiences. Over the following weeks, life on the ranch grew richer. Ayanna became a central figure in the boys' lives, teaching them lessons about nature, survival, and empathy. She introduced small traditions from her own culture, simple stories, songs, and ways of working with the land, that Daniel and the boys embraced with curiosity and respect. In turn, Daniel shared his knowledge of ranching, farming, and life on the frontier, creating a balance of skills and wisdom that made the family stronger and more resilient. The townspeople, who had initially been wary and judgmental, began to notice the change. They saw the boys thriving, happy, and respectful, and they noticed the partnership between Daniel and Ayanna, built on mutual respect, care, and genuine affection. Slowly, suspicion and gossip turned to quiet admiration. People began to understand that Ayanna's presence was a blessing, not a burden, and that the family she had joined was stronger and more united because of her. One afternoon, as the family gathered near the creek to cool off and play, Daniel reflected on how far they had come. He watched Ayanna laughing with the boys, their faces bright with joy, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had not been easy. There had been fear, prejudice, and danger, but they had faced it together. The hardships had forged a bond that was strong and enduring, a family not just created by circumstance, but chosen with intention and love. Evenings were the most cherished time of the day. After the boys were tucked into bed, Daniel and Ayanna would sit by the fire, talking quietly about their hopes and dreams. They spoke of the future, of plans for the ranch, and of the family they wanted to nurture. Each conversation strengthened their connection, building trust and understanding. Their hands would often meet, fingers entwining, and a gentle warmth passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of love and commitment that words could never fully capture. Gianna, once a woman wandering alone and cast out, now felt secure, loved, and valued. She had a home where she was accepted, a partner who respected and cared for her, and children who adored her. For the first time in years, she could dream about the future with confidence and hope. Daniel, who had carried the weight of loss and responsibility alone for so long, found comfort and joy in her presence. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. They were a family in every sense of the word. As seasons changed, so too did the ranch. The land flourished under their combined care. The boys grew stronger and wiser, and the bond between Daniel and Ayanna deepened with each passing day. They celebrated small victories, like a successful harvest or a new calf born on the ranch, and supported one another through challenges, teaching the boys that life was about resilience, patience, and love. The story of the ranch became known in the town as a tale of courage, trust, and hope. Neighbors who had once doubted or feared Ayanna's presence began to admire the family for their strength and unity. Daniel and Ayanna's partnership was seen as a model of respect and collaboration, showing that love and commitment could bridge differences and create something lasting. One quiet evening, Daniel and Ayanna stood on the porch, watching the sunset once more. The boys were inside, finishing a story, and the ranch was calm. Daniel turned to Ayanna, taking her hands in his. "We've come so far," he said softly. "Through everything, we've built this family together, and I want you to know I will always choose you. You and the boys, you're my life." Ayanna smiled, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "And I choose you, Daniel. I choose this family, this life, and the love we share." As the stars emerged, twinkling brightly above, they stood together, feeling the weight of the journey behind them and the promise of the future ahead. They had faced fear, loss, and uncertainty, yet in the end, they had found safety, belonging, and love. Their family was strong, resilient, and full of hope, a testament to the power of trust, compassion, and the courage to open one's heart. Life on the ranch continued with the same rhythm, but now it carried a deeper meaning. Every sunrise, every shared meal, every laugh of the boys reminded them that family was not only about blood, but about choice, care, and devotion. Together, Daniel, Ayanna, and the boys had created a home filled with warmth, understanding, and love. And in that home, they knew they could face any challenge, celebrate any joy, and walk forward in life with hearts full of hope. In the end, what began as a simple act of shelter had grown into a lifetime of connection. Daniel had found a partner who could love, guide, and strengthen his family. Ayanna had found a home where she was cherished and safe, and the boys had found the love of both a father and a mother, shaping their world with guidance, security, and affection. Together they stood as a family built not by chance alone, but by choice, courage, and the belief that love could transform lives. And in the quiet beauty of the frontier, beneath the endless sky and the golden light of the sun, their story continued, full of promise, peace, and enduring happiness.